All right, everybody, your Ben Joravsky Show is about to begin for Tuesday, March 26th. But before we get started, we have to thank the following unions for helping make the Ben Joravsky Show return. First off, it's the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, not Aerosmith, Local 126 and District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Thank you once again to those unions for jumping on board with us and helping make this possible. And, of course, today's show is brought to you by our dear friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Your Ben Joravsky Show starts now. It is Tuesday, March 26th, and live from the Chicago Reader Chicago Sun-Times studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, our Chicago Reader colleague Maya Dukmasova will join us, former Illinois Lieutenant Gubernatorial candidate Rod Joy, and we take the deep dive with teacher/7th Congressional District candidate Anthony Clark. And now your host, not a congressional district candidate, Chicago Reader columnist, Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Deny Tuesday. And here's why. Great weekend, everybody. You have a good weekend, D?
It was okay.
Oh, just okay.
Yeah, it's Tuesday, though. Weekend's kind of over.
Oh, yeah. Well, my weekend lasts a little longer than yours, all right? My good friend.
I'm going to do that every Tuesday, by the way.
My dear friend Ed Pipes in town today. Brother Ed, as I like to call him. Visiting for us from Colorado, and he's in the studio. Say hello to everybody, Ed.
Good afternoon. Great to be in Chicago.
That's Brother Ed Pipes. He's the head coach of the Rwanda basketball team, country of Rwanda basketball team, national team, and he is a dear friend of mine. He's in the studio. And what else? I saw Jordan Peele's latest movie, saw Us. I liked it so much, folks, that as soon as it was over, I declared I have to see it again because it was so complicated. I missed like half of what was going on in that movie. Miles, our in-house editor, you saw it too as well. Did you figure it out as well?
Not really.
Yeah, you got to see it again.
Got to see it twice.
And I'm going to take Miles' dad. Miles' dad is a little scared of scary movies, hiding under the table. Come on out, Cap. You can come out, watch the movie with me. Anyway, so it was a very complicated movie. I'll tell you what's not complicated, though, folks. It's the behavior of some of our more prominent citizens in this country, starting with your president, Donald John Trump. Man, he's so transparent, I could see through the inner core. All right, now, after our show on Friday, the Mueller report came out, and according to Attorney General William Barr, we've not seen the report, by the way. Let me just repeat that, emphasize that. We'll be talking about it all week, though we've not actually seen the report. But according to the brief summary prepared by Attorney General William Barr, quote, while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. Let me repeat that one more time. While this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. So what does Trump do? He calls a press conference. I've been exonerated. That's not what it says. Doesn't matter to Donald Trump. I've been exonerated, even though the report says the exact opposite. Donald Trump says, I've been exonerated, even though the report says, and I quote, while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. Now, Democrats don't know what to do as we head into the campaign season of 2020. Do they press on with an investigation of Donald Trump? Do they change the subject for fear that there might be a backlash against them for like looking mean and nasty to the president? Or do they just, let Trump trash talk and hope the whole thing goes away? Really, nothing has changed, folks. About 50% of the population who despises Trump still despises Trump, and the 45% or so that reveres Trump still reveres him. And there's the folks in the middle, and our future hinges on how they view this. I'll tell you one thing. Trump says he's counterattacking. He's going to investigate the investigators. So Democrats, my advice to you is don't back down. Trump's not backing down. You shouldn't back down. You got to fight him, hit him hard on this one, because he's just going to try to intimidate you into laying low. The lessons learned? you can go far in life if you're unafraid to lie. If you defiantly say you've been exonerated, even if the report says, quote, you've not been exonerated, you can go far in life. On the local level, man, there's somebody here in the city of Chicago who's apparently learned that lesson. Jussie Smollett, the actor who apparently made up that report about being assaulted a couple of months ago, had the city's police going upside and down investigating it. Turned out it was all made up. The state's attorneys today dropped all charges in exchange for Smollett forfeiting a $10,000 bond. When Ed and I were coming into the studio today, we heard Smollett on the radio, and he was thanking everybody. He thanks his friends. He thanked his family. He thanked his faith. He thanked his God. You got a question there, Young D?
First of all, I want to thank my family, my friends, the incredible people of Chicago and all over the country and the world who have prayed for me, who have supported me, who've shown me so much love. No one will ever know how much that has meant to me, and I will forever be grateful.
Okay, first of all, nobody in the city of Chicago showed you love. Everybody in the city of Chicago is mad at you for making up a story.
Wait, he's not done. He's not done.
Oh, sorry.
I would not be my mother's son if I was capable of one drop of what I have been accused of. This has been an incredibly difficult time, honestly one of the worst of my entire life.
If it was so bad, why'd you make up the story in the first place? I mean, it's an incredible, difficult time, like one of the worst in my life. Yeah, because you made up a story and then had the city going upside down and inside and out. By the way, did he thank the state's attorney?
Wait, hold on.
And I would also like to thank the state of Illinois for attempting to do what's right.
Oh, I see. Okay. I was hoping he thanked the state's attorney for dropping charges. That's really the only one he should be thanking. They just want to, like, can we get this off center stage and move on? Anyway, yeah, it's pretty obvious that, Mr. Smollett there made up a story, got out of a deeper punishment that he probably deserves, and is now just diverting our attention by thanking this one and thanking that one. And, you know, some people say, well, what are you going to do next? And he's not sure what he's going to do next. I have a suggestion. Mr. Smollett, why don't you run for president? Saying up is down and down is up has worked well for Donald Trump. It might work for you. We got a great show today, everybody. Maya Dukmasova will be coming in at 1:30 talking local politics as we head down the stretch run. Oh, my goodness. I didn't even get into Bobby Rush and his comments over the weekend. And shaking his head, man.
Yeah, we'll get there.
We'll get there. Rod Joy, good friend of this show. He ran with Chris Kennedy for lieutenant governor last year's primary. And a lot of people said Rod Joy should run for mayor of the city of Chicago, and he decided not to. But he'll be in the studio. We're talking politics with Rod Joy. Looking forward to that. And at 2:30 hour, Anthony Clark will be joining us. He ran against Danny K. Davis for Congress in the 7th Congressional. He's a teacher in Oak Park. I got a feeling he's going to run against Danny K. Davis again. Sort of a generational battle there. Anthony Clark, a young man, more of the, let's see what, Bernie Sanders persuasion, I was going to say. So we have Anthony Clark. Always love talking politics with Anthony Clark. Maybe we get Rod Joy to sit in for a while and have a group conversation. Ed Pipes is in the studio. Miles is in the studio. The Dr. D's in the studio. The political talk is about to begin. But before we do any of that, the doctor has the news.
All right, everybody. I'm Dennis. How's it going? It's the middle of the day. Let's catch up. Let's still talk about that big national news story that happened while we were away. Turn out the lights. The party's over. Or is it? The 2-year Russian collusion investigation from special counsel Robert Mueller has come to a close. Or has it? Ben Joravsky, your overall thoughts and a question, although I think you already know the answer. Are some of our Republican friends, who are we kidding? All of our Republican friends, are they celebrating this a little too soon?
Oh, yeah, they're really celebrating it too soon, and they're already on the counterattack. Ed Pipes, I know you got some opinions about this one. Donald Trump has already announced that he is going to launch an investigation into the investigators. Now, there are some people who would say politically, Donald, just change the subject. You know, just like do you actually could learn something from Jussie Smollett. Just thank everybody here, thank there, you know, get out of town.
Fade out.
Fade out, but not Donald Trump. What's you okay there, D?
Just keep going. No one can see this.
It was pretty funny. Anyway, not Donald Trump. He's going to do a counterattack. He's coming after the Democrats. He's calling for an investigation of the investigators. He wants the Democrats investigated. His son is tweeting out trash talks against the various congressmen and calling for them to apologize to Donald Trump, even though The Attorney General clearly states that Donald Trump is not exonerated.
Does he not understand the SDNY? Southern District of New York.
Oh,
is still
yeah.
there.
That's right. Further investigations could come out of the Southern District of New York federal courthouse. So, yeah, so Donald Trump is not off the hook. And apparently he is doubling down on this. And so we will be discussing the investigation of the investigation, the investigation of the investigation of the investigation.
Oh,
probably,
my head hurts.
And probably right up until Election Day itself.
So the questions of Robert Mueller's investigation continue, but Ben, it looks like some Democrats are moving on. Top House Democrats agreed Monday night that the caucus needs to stop talking about collusion with Russia because it was distracting from their legislative agenda.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is the Nancy Pelosi theory of things. Nancy Pelosi has stated that she doesn't even want impeachment as a discussion on the agenda, and she wants to talk about issues that she thinks will bring the Democratic Party victory in the 2020 election. Top of the list, of course, is health care. And, Trump now wants to double down on destroying Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. I'll probably talk about that later in the show. And so that my guess is that Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats are going to try to put the focus on health care, because they know that's a winning issue for them, because people liked to have health care, in case they get sick. So that's what's going down.
The Washington Post reports that in a meeting of leadership, the consensus was reached that Democrats need to focus on economic issues. Oh, and this new issue just got added to the Democrats' focus list, health care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Trump administration announced last night that it formally supported a lower court judge's ruling that would throw out the entire Affordable Care Act. In a filing with the Federal Appeals Court, the Justice Department said it agreed with the ruling of a federal judge in Texas that invalidated the Obama-era health care.
Yes, that would be federal judge Reed O'Connor, who used a technicality to, as you said, invalidate Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. And it's a very dangerous decision by that judge. Essentially, tens of millions of people will be without health care, particularly if you have a pre-existing condition. And essentially the issue is, can Congress force people who don't have health care to pay a penalty for not having insurance? And that money is what, of course, we need to subsidize or underwrite the cost of health care for all. And so if you do away with that provision that people have to pay that penalty, that fine or fee, et cetera, there really is no health care. There's no money for it. That's how insurance works, folks. You pool all your money to cover the risk to the insurer of having to pay out. That's how it works.
Car insurance, homeowners insurance, all that has to be, subsidized some way.
Some way. So it's funny. I think the Republicans have lost their mind in this point, because it would be as though the Republicans had pipes were to say, you know what, we don't want car insurance anymore. We don't want home insurance anymore. And so it's a very tricky situation for people who are caught in the middle, as Donald Trump is like doubling down on this bizarre ideology, this anti-Obama ideology that has prevailed in the Republican Party since about 2009.
If you get pulled over and you don't have car insurance, they take away your driver's license, your driving privileges. So, those things you must pay for, you must have. So health insurance, help them.
I know. That is an interesting point. Yeah, if you get pulled over and you don't have your insurance card in the car, you could lose your car here in the state of Illinois, the city of Chicago. But health insurance, drop dead.
So based on that, it sounds like we now have two strong talking points for the Donald Trump 2020 campaign just in the last 2 days. No more Affordable Care Act and
no collusion.
Yeah, no collusion. Indeed, we'll be talking more about the Mueller report and the implications, the political implications as the week unfolds, and then also the health care issue. But it seems as though that Donald Trump is going to counterattack on the investigators, go after the investigators. And I don't know who he's appealing to by destroying Obamacare, but he apparently thinks that there is electoral victory for him in doing that. So he's going to try to destroy Obamacare.
So if any updates become available on that, we will keep you posted as today's program rolls right along. Benny J, I got to know.
Yeah?
You ready to find out what's going on in Illinois and or Chicago?
I was born ready.
Love that answer. Always a good answer, especially at this time, because coming up after this short little break, people, we are going to find out what else is news.
I can't wait. This is the moment in the show where the doctor plucks that little trick out of his little sleeve. We'll see what it is when we return.
Hey there, producer Dennis here. Thanks for finding and listening to the brand new Ben Joravsky Show. All right, so here's how this works. The Ben Joravsky Show live streams on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Once the show is over, you can listen to the replay on our YouTube channel, or we throw it online for you to download by 4 p.m. Where can you download the Ben Joravsky Show, you may be asking yourself? Well, you may be asking yourself a fantastic question. You can find previous Ben Joravsky shows and guest interviews through several outlets. The Chicago Sun-Times online, chicago.suntimes.com, the Chicago Reader online, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, pick one. Just search for The Ben Joravsky Show. J-O-R-A, V as in victory, S-K-Y. So, let's recap. Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m., live streamed on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel and downloadable by 4 at chicago.suntimes.com, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcast. Yes, the Ben Joravsky Show is back. We're live and downloaded. Tell your friends and enjoy the rest of the show. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Yes, indeed. Maya Dukmasova from the Chicago Readers in the studio. She's warming up. She's getting ready to talk a lot of treasurer talk. Hey, who's watching that money in the city of Chicago? She's got the lowdown on that. Probably throw some other political questions, the madness of the mayor's race as it heads down to the final stretch. And on April 2nd, we'll be talking about the big show. Maya and I will be live in Bridgeport on April 2nd, so we'll be talking about that. As Dr. D will be there. He'll be spinning records and juggling and telling jokes and all kinds of things.
He's going to be having a beer, hanging out. Not doing any of that.
None of that stuff. All right. Anyway, what you got for me, young man?
We're about to find out what's going on locally. My God, can we just get a new mayor already? It's time for what else is news.
Stuff,
the magic number is now 7. Yes, 7 days, 1 week away from the 2019 Chicago runoff elections, and 7 days until Chicago has a new mayor. Will it be the Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle or the former Chicago Police Board President Lori Lightfoot? Well, according to the latest election poll we're about to read from Normington Pets and Associates, yeah, it's for sure Lori Lightfoot. You have some very telling numbers to read, but first, these two had a televised debate last night. For those keeping track at home, by the way, that now makes it debate number 8,000, I believe, between these guys.
And with 10,000 more to go.
Oh, my Lord. So many debates between Tony Preckwinkle and Lori Lightfoot. If you want to hear the highlights of last night's, go find them at WGN.com. They hosted the thing. We're going to play 2 audio clips from the debate last night because, quite frankly, getting a little sick of these things. And honestly, there really isn't much else to debate. You know what I mean? I think we know the issues. People probably know where they stand. So the recent comment from Illinois Congressman Bobby Rush came out last night. Now, Ben, walk everybody through what exactly went down.
My old friend Bobby Rush, he's been a congressman from the 1st Congressional District since about, 1993, I want to say. Anyway, before that, he was an alderman in the Chicago City Council. Ran for mayor once in 1999. I think, Bobby, you really blew it on this one. On Sunday at a Preckwinkle rally, he's decided to endorse Tony Preckwinkle for mayor. He expressed his opinion. Let me get that the blood.
I have the audio.
Oh, you can play it yourself.
Here's Bobby Rush.
And everybody who votes for Lori, the blood of the next young black man or black woman who's killed by the police is on your hands.
All right. Okay, Bobby Rush is saying that the blood of the next young black man or black woman who is killed by the police is on your hands. In other words, somehow or other, people who vote for Lori Lightfoot will then be morally culpable or responsible if, by chance, a young black man or black woman is killed by a Chicago police officer. I think that's absolutely extreme rhetoric by Bobby Rush, and it's bizarre. It's very bizarre comment he's making. Bobby Rush in the first go-around, everybody, endorsed Bill Daley, Baby Daley. He endorsed Bill Daley. That was his candidate of choice in the first go-around. All right, so let me just think about this for a second. Had Bill Daley prevailed, as Bobby Rush apparently wanted him to, and to make the runoff against Lori Lightfoot, would he still be making this argument? Would he be saying that Bill Daley is somehow or other going to be a greater protector against police brutality than Lori Lightfoot? It's a very extreme, bizarre point to be made by Bobby Rush in the aftermath of having endorsed a Daley, Bill Daley. The Daley family ran the city of Chicago throughout the 90s and the O's when there was a lot of police brutality being perpetrated in the city of Chicago. And so it's just very interesting that Bobby Rush would endorse Bill Daley and then all of a sudden wake up on election day after that first election day and see Lori Lightfoot as a great threat. So it was bizarre comment and it was a volatile comment, and I wish Bobby hadn't made it.
Both candidates were asked about Bobby Rush's comments. First up, it's Tony Preckwinkle.
Congressman Rush speaks for himself. He's been a civil rights activist his entire life. And the concerns that he raised about police misconduct and the treatment of black and brown people in our criminal justice system are valid concerns.
And here's Lori Lightfoot.
There were 91,000 people that supported me in February. I expect a similar or larger number this next time around. It's surprising to me that she would say that somehow they're essentially murderers.
Yeah. Tony Preckwinkle's doing a little ducking and dodging there. I mean, yes, there are valid concerns on the issue of police brutality, but the issue with Bobby Rush is not the fact that he stated there's valid concerns. It's he said that people who vote for a candidate other than the one he's endorsing are somehow or other morally culpable for violence that occurs that they have nothing to do with, that they did not create or cause. And as I said before, it's a very curious statement, a very strong statement for Bobby Rush, considering that, one more time, everybody, just 3 weeks ago, he was endorsing Bill Daley for Mayor City of Chicago.
All right, everyone. It's now poll time. Once again, Normington, Wells & Associates just released a voter poll on the Chicago mayoral runoff. Ben, before we get into this, please tell us your opinion on election polls. Do you trust them? Do you like them? And if we were to take a poll on election polls, how would a poll on election polls poll?
Wow, yeah. Well, you know, Maya's in the studio. We're going to talk to her maybe a little bit about this. She's got some strong opinions about election polls, indeed. She's expressed one or more times. I have to admit, at the risk of getting into this argument with Maya on this one, I have to admit I'm pretty obsessed with election polls. And then I have this curiosity, like when they're all done, how accurate were the polls? And then I love getting into the discussion, this is how much a geek I am, Ed Pipes, as to whether the polls really were accurate or somehow or other, they were distorted when they came out. Like, if you recall, with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, it seems as though everybody was predicting that Hillary Clinton would be the next president, and then Donald Trump won, electoral victory, and then Donald Trump said the pollsters were wrong, and he kept hammering that point. And then when you took the deep dive in the polls, they said, well, the polls were showing that Donald Trump could very well win an electoral college victory, so the polls weren't as wrong as everybody said they were, if you recall that one.
As we drove in this morning, you mentioned one specific thing. You need plausible what?
Plausible deniability.
That's all you need, Ben. Don't worry about it.
You can spin it. Yeah, plausible deniability. That's been the theme of the week. Anyway, that poll was sponsored by Max Temkin, and he will be a guest on our show tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So we'll pick Mac's brain on that poll.
All right, let's get to the numbers of the poll here. We have the numbers on the race between Lori Lightfoot and Tony Preckwinkle, as well as some other interesting poll questions. A majority of those taking the poll were Democratic voters. After all, it is Chicago. And in case if you were wondering, 23% of those polled had bachelor's degree, with 25% with a master's degree, Ben.
Yeah, it's smart people.
Smart poll takers. All right, now, on to question one.
Yeah.
On April 2nd, there will be an election in Chicago for mayor. How likely would you say you are to vote in this election? Will you definitely vote? Probably vote? Are the chances 50-50? Will you probably not vote? Or will you definitely not vote? Definitely 84%. 84% of those who took the poll will vote.
Wow. I don't know about that.
Yeah,
right off
that's
the
our
bat.
first one. That's our first
right
one.
off the bat. I got some issues with that one. That's people saying the right thing. Well, I know I'm supposed to say I'm going to vote, but I don't believe we've ever had an 84% turnout,
Right.
even at the greatest elections of all time. I think the Harold Washington election of '83, there's like 82% turnout.
I think it's one of those things, like if someone were to ask you in public, like, and even if you weren't going to vote, you would say yes anyway,
Yes.
right?
Ben, do you eat broccoli? Yes, I love broccoli.
Of course, it's great.
Oh, yeah.
Every day.
Did we check the weather report
Yeah.
for next Tuesday?
Yeah, yeah, right. If it's a cold day, maybe we won't reach
So
40%.
84% definitely will vote. 10% probably vote. 50-50, 6%. And the other two are at 0%, so they just terminated those. So.
Wait, what? So 2%, okay.
Yeah. All right, on to question number 2. Would you say things in Chicago are generally headed in the right direction? Or would you say things are pretty seriously off on the wrong track? All right. 28% say right direction. 21% say, I don't know. With 51% saying that things are headed on the wrong track.
Wow. 51% say things are headed on the wrong track, man. That's that's no sunny skies, man. It's no sunny skies in the city of Chicago. That's Brad Joy, what he thinks about that. 51% of the people polled say the city's heading in a bad track. And considering the financial problems, we'll be talking about this with Maya we're facing, I can understand, because everybody realizes if you're paying any kind of attention, you're going to be facing some sort of tax hike in the coming year.
So 51% think that Chicago is headed on the wrong track. All right, here's one Ben can riff on. This is actually question number 6 of the survey. What if Rahm Emanuel was running for re-election as mayor? Would you vote for him or not? 25% say yes, they would vote for Mayor Rahm if he were running in this election. 12% say, I don't know, what are you talking about? With 63% saying that they would not vote for Mayor Rahm Emanuel.
Yeah, 63% say would not vote for Rahm Emanuel, which, by the way, folks, now you know why he didn't run for re-election. He probably had his own private polls back in September telling him the exact same thing. The interesting thing is that the 63%, they say they would not vote for Rahm. 51% say Chicago's heading in the wrong direction. I think if you ask that 51% why is Chicago heading in the wrong direction, they'd probably say Rahm Emanuel. So there's some correlation between those two answers.
All right, and finally, it's the moment we've been waiting for. Poll results on our Chicago mayoral runoff. If the election for mayor was held today and the candidates were Lori Lightfoot and Tony Preckwinkle, for whom would you vote? And if undecided, which candidate do you lean towards supporting? Lori Lightfoot, 47%. Leaning Lightfoot, 6%. All right? So that's a combined total of 53% for Lori Lightfoot. On to Tony Preckwinkle. 14% say they would vote for Preckwinkle. 3% lean Preckwinkle, giving Tony Preckwinkle a combined 17%.
Yeah.
29% go, I don't know. I'm still confused. So there you are.
Well, the Tony Preckwinkle people are banking on that 29%. And the theory that has been explained to me by Tony Preckwinkle supporters is that it's a silent majority. So for some reason, there's many people who are embarrassed to say they're for Tony Preckwinkle. That's the whole theory of a silent majority. That's like the Trump theory. Like there's a lot of people. This is why they say the Trump people say you can't trust a poll about Donald Trump, because people are ashamed to say they're for him and they're actually for him. Dennis, I think you've espoused this theory from time to time that people are ashamed or embarrassed to say that they're for Donald Trump.
Oh yeah.
And so they'll tell a pollster, well, no, of course I'm not for Trump, or they'll say I'm undecided. So the Tony Preckwinkle people are saying that that 29% is locked in.
Well, let's try and help out the 29% for Tony Preckwinkle. Hey guys, you know she likes antiques, right?
I love antique shows and antique fairs.
Come on.
There you go.
Maybe that'll help.
I could see thousands of voters rushing. Oh, I did not know about the antiques.
Does she have a hat?
Does she have a hat?
A MAGA hat.
Oh,
a Preckwinkle hat.
Tony Preckwinkle does not have a MAGA hat. Let's not get that one going.
Yeah. Well, that's a crazy road we're going down there, Mr. Pipes. All right, so there you are. Just like that, you're now in the know of what's going on in this city of ours, in Chicago, and now you will have an answer the next time someone asks you, hey, what else is news?
Yeah, let me tell you something.
Okay.
Something that Ed Pipes thinks.
All right.
Something that Mr. Ed. Remember Mr. Ed the horse?
Yeah,
he thinks
the
it
horse.
too.
Talking horse.
And something that J.B. Pritzker, speaking of horses, he loves horses,
Oh,
right?
my God, he does.
Don't forget that one. Something they all agree on. You know what that is?
Huh.
You did a great job. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. We'll be right back with Maya.
If you would like to advertise with the Ben Joravsky Show, and who wouldn't, contact Tracy Baim at publisher@chicagoreadercorp.com. We have several advertising options for your business or organization, and quite frankly, we would love nothing more than to tell our listeners all about it. Once again, that's Tracy Baim at publisher@chicagoreadercorp, that's CORP as in Paul.com, to advertise with the Ben Joravsky Show, the Chicago Reader, and the Chicago Sun-Times. We look forward to plugging you. Okay, well, that came out kind of weird. More of the Ben Joravsky Show live and downloaded in moments. Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by the Chicago Sun-Times. For the latest in Chicago and Illinois news, sports, weather, and the latest in national news from a real Chicago frame of mind and real Chicago writers, check out the Chicago Sun-Times. Read the daily paper or online at chicago.suntimes.com. And hey, if you have a little extra cash, subscribe. And by the Chicago Reader. For a deeper dive in the daily Chicago news and for all of what's going on in this city, you gotta read the Reader. Music, arts and culture, film, extensive event calendars, concert listings, and more, including weekly political columns from writers like Maya Dukmasova and, yes, our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader is free in newsstands and at chicagoreader.com. That's chicagoreader.com. Hey, welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Benny J, take it away.
All right, will do. I will take it away. Maya Dukmasova is in the studio with me once a week. She comes in. She's the ace writer for my beloved Reader. I am another ace writer for my beloved Reader. Maya's the younger half of the Ben Maya team that we've got. We're building like a whole empire of our own, Maya.
Empire.
We got podcasts, and we're doing. Tell everybody about the election night. We're repeating the fun from February 26th. We're doing it again on April 2nd.
Yeah, we're doing it bigger and better this time. So for everyone who watched our election night live cast out of the back room of a Chicago Reader office and enjoyed that, you'll be happy to know that we will once again be live streaming our election night analysis and responses. But this time we're also having a live party at the same time. So this will be April 2nd, starting at 6 p.m. at Mars Community Brewing in Bridgeport. That's at 3630 South Iron Street. It's the Mars Tap Room and Brewery. Mars spelled M-A-R-Z for those unaware. So we will have some special guests. We will have a amazing DJ there as well. Sadie Woods, all vinyl. She's spinning all vinyl. There's going to be a lot of classics, Ben.
I've been told, man, they're gonna play old people music for you, Ben.
Oh man,
they're gonna have great music there. There's going to be food. There's going to be beer, and best of all, this event is free. So
wait, one more time, free?
Yes, the event is absolutely free.
As in Free?
That's right.
As in you don't have to pay money.
You don't have to pay money to be part of the event. Just your bar bill, basically. Right. So everybody should come through, and we'll whatever the results are, we're gonna have a good time, and there'll be good food and drinks and dancing, and yeah, I think it'll be I think it'll be a good party.
All right. Well, we're off to a good start with the Ben Joravsky Show on Tuesday because not only did Maya show up on time, early actually, my 2 o'clock guest, Rod Joy, is here on time. Settle in, young man. We'll bring him on. Rod Joy, one of my favorite politicians, or I don't know if you call yourself a politician. All right. Public citizens, I should say. And he's in the studio. We're going to bring him on in a little bit. So Maya, we're going to have April 2nd. They're going to play music for young people. And music
and for all kinds of people.
Old timers like myself. They're going to play You Got Me Going in Circles.
No singing.
For some reason, I've been thinking about that song all day. I can't get it out of my mind.
Friends of Distinction.
Ed Pipes, from my generation, ladies and gentlemen. Friends of Distinction. That is correct. Also did Grazing in the Grass. Remember that one, Ed? Hugh Masekela, but they put it to words. Anyway, all right, enough.
Let's talk to the people with microphones now.
Enough talk about old music. Maya, you are about to, you wrote your story already. It hasn't hit the streets yet. I guess it comes out tomorrow.
Thursday.
Thursday. Yeah. Oh, not Wednesday?
Well, this reader comes out on Thursdays, Ben.
Oh, I always get mine on Wednesdays.
Well, so sometimes some of the boxes are filled on Wednesday nights. So, and the story will be online as well. So between Wednesday and Thursday, it should be out there for everybody to be able to read. I wrote about the city treasurer's race, which I feel like has gotten relatively little attention. And I mean, it's gotten more attention than these treasurer's elections normally do, because for the first time in since 1999, we actually have a choice for treasurer. Yeah. And for the first time since like 1989 or even before that, we are choosing between 2 new candidates for this position and not, a mayoral appointee and somebody who just happened to make the ballot alongside them.
Yeah, there's a great tradition in Chicago of having the treasurer step down right before the election, having the mayor appoint a successor, and then that person running as like the incumbent with a record, even though just got the job. All right, so let's break it down a little bit. First of all, before you get into the candidates, why is this seat an important position?
Yeah, so the treasurer, this is something that I had to also educate myself on reporting the story, because I frankly had no idea what the treasurer does or why they're important. But essentially, this is the person, this is the office that maintains the city's $8 billion of cash flow. And they make sure that when the city cuts a check, whether they pay the salary of an employee or a workers' comp payment or, a legal settlement, that there's actually money behind that check. The city's money is stored in one of 17 municipal depositories. This is just the word that they use to identify private banks where the city, has accounts. So it's banks like, there's some like more local institutions. There's things as big as JP Morgan Chase and Bank of America. So the treasurer makes sure to, maintain relationships with these municipal depositories and also oversees investment strategy. So just like when you have some extra money in your possession, you want to try to make it work for you, either by putting it into a savings account or, putting it on the stock market or something of that nature, so it can generate some kind of interest for you. The city money, we're talking about $8 billion. Like, of course, there's not all $8 billion of it is in use at every single moment. So the treasurer oversees investment of that money so that it can generate some returns. Now, this treasurer doesn't just have like full discretion to do whatever to make them, to make the biggest investment returns with that money. There's very strict city and state laws that govern how city money can be invested. It has to be very safe, since we're talking about taxpayer dollars. It has to be, bonds, securities that are very, very safe, that don't tend to generate insane returns. But still, there's some discretion that the treasurer and their staff, who are hopefully financial professionals, there's some discretion that they have over these decisions. And finally, the treasurer also sits on the pension boards. So the city's 4 pension funds for police officers, firefighters, laborers, and essentially white-collar municipal workers. All of those pension funds have boards that govern them, that make decisions about how the money is invested, how the pension funds are invested, and the treasurer is a member of all of those boards. the treasurer is also involved with the Chicago Teachers Pension Fund, but not as a voting board member. They mostly just have like some bookkeeping responsibilities over that fund. But since there's tens of billions of dollars in those pension funds, the treasurer has the possibility to influence how decisions are made about how that money is invested, how the retirement money is invested. So everything that is up to the treasurer's discretion is pretty narrowly governed and circumscribed by these city and state laws that are designed to protect taxpayer money. But the experts that I talked to basically said that it is an office that can be a pretty effective advocate for certain kinds of policies. And in recent years, the treasurer's office under Kurt Summers, especially our current treasurer, has taken on a bunch of kind of public education roles in the city, trying to do more consumer finance education, trying to connect people and small businesses with resources to start up their businesses, to get financing for whether it's mortgages or opening up a new business. So they're kind of doing they play a public role, not in the sense that like maybe the city clerk does, which is the other one of the three city elected executives. You have the mayor, city clerk, and treasurer. So a lot of people have regular contact with the city clerk, paying tickets or whatever. The treasurer, you're more likely to connect with them as a regular person in the city if you're, go to a workshop that they're hosting on, personal finance.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned the city clerk when Miguel de Valle, this is going back a few years, became the city clerk in the O's. Luis Gutierrez, who was his rival, his political rival, sneered. He said, "Oh, Mike, he's going to be, handing out the dog tags." He was sneering, he was mocking, he was making fun of him. And that sort of attitude is also prevalent with the treasurer's office to a degree, as though it's not really an important office. People don't know about it. Like as I said, so many of them are just appointees of the mayor. Kurt Summers, the one who's stepping down, was originally appointee of the mayor. Do you think that there's potential in the treasurer's office to turn it into a significant pulpit, if you will?
Yeah. So the interesting thing about this office is that it's historically been very important. It seems like it's been very important for the mayor of Chicago to have a kind of a close rein on whoever occupies that office, because even though the person in that office doesn't have a ton of discretion and ability to change city policy or really strike out on their own and change how we do things in the city, that is a citywide elected position. And if somebody is in that office who has some political ambition, they have a pretty high up springboard to challenge the mayor or the mayor's allies in various ways. So what you see historically is, the mayor being very interested in keeping this person on a tight leash, and it's also been a way that, especially the Daleys have maintained a sort of air of integration in citywide executive offices. So historically, again, there's been this kind of way that like, oh, we've got a white mayor and a black city clerk or a black treasurer, and then like a Latino city clerk or treasurer.
The Rainbow Coalition,
yeah,
if you will. And
back in 1989, this is so fascinating. This is what I learned from reporting the story. So between like 79 and 89, we had Cecil Partee, who was the treasurer, who seemed like it had pretty good relationships with the various mayors of the 80s. And when Richard M. Daley was elected in 1989, he promptly, the Cook County Board promptly appointed Partee as the new head of the state's attorney's office, and he would then lose the actual the next election for state's attorney. And once he was out of the treasurer's seat, Richard M. Daley put in Miriam Santos, who was the first Latino citywide official, citywide executive, basically. Okay. She was the first. There had been Latino aldermen, but she was the first city executive to Hispanic city executive. So through fairly quickly in the early 90s, Miriam Santos proved to have some separate ambitions from just being kind of a daily peon. Yeah. And she got into some pretty high profile fights with him because she rang the alarm about the mismanagement of city pension funds, which Daley was not happy with. And it seems like nevertheless, they maintained some kind of okay alliance, because she kept being the only person on the ballot through the 90s, and even though she had some some political ambition. I guess they couldn't have been that on the outs because there was never anybody other than her running for that office until 1999 when this is the most Chicago thing I've ever heard of. So Miriam Santos in the late 90s made a stab at another elected position. I think she was running for the state house or state senate or something like that. And there was like a bunch of corrupt goings on within her campaign. Yeah. And in 1999, she was indicted on mail fraud and attempted extortion charges.
Shaking down people for bribes.
Yeah. And in February of 1999,
for campaign contributions.
Right. And in February of 1999, despite that indictment, just like the old Chicago tradition, she got reelected. But it was a contested election. Dorothy Brown ran against her. And unsuccessfully, Miriam sailed through the election. There was no runoff. And a couple months later, she was convicted of those charges and had to vacate the office because she was now a convicted felon. So
Chicago.
Yeah. But it gets wilder because then Miriam Santos has to exit. She goes to prison for she starts her prison term. She got like a 40-month sentence. Daley appointed Barbara Lumpkin to replace her. There were immediately some kind of patronage hiring controversies in the office once Lumpkin was appointed. And 4 months into Miriam Santos's sentence, her conviction gets overturned by an appellate court. Yep. And so she is no longer, has a criminal conviction, and her ouster from the elected office is voided. Like, she is still the elected official. Yes. So she comes back to head the office and gets back pay for it. And finally, a few months later, this is all in 1999. A few months later, in 1999, 2000. So it's like a great couple of years. Yeah. So finally, she has to step down because she pleads guilty to one count of mail fraud because she doesn't want to go through a whole retrial. So she just takes a guilty plea, and she doesn't have to serve any more time in prison. She takes time served, and after her, Daley appoints Judith Rice, who then becomes treasurer for a few years. Yes, and just to kind of round out to our current moment. So Judith Rice gets appointed. She becomes treasurer. Then she steps down right before a re-election. And Daley appoints Stephanie Neely, who then is reelected. And then finally in 2014, Stephanie Neely, this always happens in October. They always step down in October or November. Then the mayor appoints someone new, and then that person runs unopposed. And so then after Stephanie Neely left for the private sector, we got Kurt Summers in 2014, who was a protege of Tony Preckwinkle. And many people sort of saw him as having higher political ambitions. And some of my sources on the story said that they felt like it's because he showed clear signs of higher political ambition that Rahm sort of didn't let him really flourish in that treasurer's office.
Well, I mean, obviously, that, by the way, great recitation. As you were going through all those names, it was just bringing back memories. I remember.
Just awash with nostalgia.
Miriam Santos' great return, like Napoleon coming back to France, you know what I mean? Declaring, I am the treasurer. And I did a story on Miriam Santos in the 90s, spent some time with her, and I remember she had tremendous potential. She was a very charismatic politician, and she fell afoul. She went strong against the Daleys on the pensions, got into a very public fight with Daley and his aides, and that was just sort of like a lesson that people learn. Never get into a fight, even never be caught disagreeing with the mayor. And it's probably a lesson that applies to this day, Maya, that you don't want to get into high public fights with an all-powerful mayor.
Yeah, and I mean, so that story that you did, for folks who are interested, it's called All the Right Moves. It's a reader story from 1995. But aside from that, there's another reader story from the 90s about Miriam Santos called that Mike Miner did, that was all about this bizarre relationship between
Ray Hanania.
Former Sun-Times, Ray Hanania, and Miriam Santos, and all the ways in which this also hobbled her political ambitions.
Yeah, no, you should read that one. That one, that Ray Hanania story. I don't know Ray. If Ray's listening, hello, Ray. I've known Ray for a few years. Ray. But they leaked a story. Somebody leaked a story about their budding romance between Ray Hanania, a reporter, and Miriam Santos. Yeah, and it was all downhill for 10 trivia points. Maya, what high school did Miriam Santos graduate from?
Ooh, no.
Just say Whitney Young.
Nope.
Oh.
Horace Mann High School in Gary, Indiana. The things I know, man.
Wow.
The things no phone, by the way. No phone. Anyway, so yeah. All right. So great history. Love the names. Judith Rice. I think Judith Rice was the daughter of Fred Rice, who was the police chief.
Yep.
I remember Steffi Neely. When Steffi Neely was appointed, Ed Smith, the alderman of the 28th Ward, made some inappropriate comments about how beautiful she was. I mean, it was just like it was always that moment of the appointment where the mayor was trotting out
She's
some
beautiful.
Bright new. Yeah,
I can say it. She's beautiful.
Maya can say it, but Ed Smith shouldn't have said it. The former alderman of the 28th Ward. And then when they trotted out Kurt Summers, it's always this bright, new, energetic face in the city of Chicago who's expected to be quiet, nod the head whenever the mayor says anything, and say, "What a wonderful mayor we have."
But he had ideas.
Kurt Summers.
Oh man, what a bummer for his political career. He had some actual policy ideas, and you've written about a bunch about him. And I think early on in his appointment, you brought in some much needed criticism around how Rahm was staffing up these offices with like these sort of investment banker types and big money people. And so, but Kurt Summers' big idea has been this thing called the Catalyst Fund, which was supposed to take $100 million that was generated through investment returns from city money, and then partner with a bunch of private investors to get another like $100 to $300 million, and create this sort of fund that would provide low-cost loans for people to start small businesses in the city in underserved areas, which seems like a great idea. But the board of this Catalyst Fund was supposed to be appointed entirely by the mayor, and the mayor never appointed any of those board members, as far as I can tell from the most recent reporting about this. So the fund has and the fund has never found those. The private side partners, private investors have not been kind of wrangled together to fully capitalize the fund. And so the fund hasn't made any loans yet. And so both of the current candidates, Amaya Pawar, 47th Ward Alderman, and Melissa Conyer-Zervin, who's a state rep from the 10th district, which is on the west side of Chicago, both of them have promised that they will really, preoccupy themselves with getting this fund actually off the ground.
All right, now we finally got through the history, which is a delightful history. I love the names and the bizarre relationship between the treasurer and the mayor. The treasurer is supposed to be an independent fiduciary overseer of our finances, and in fact, is expected to be a puppet of the mayor. It's only in Chicago. Actually, probably not only in Chicago. It's probably most cities govern like that. All right, so when you think of Mayor Pawar, he's currently the alderman of the 47th Ward, and Melissa Conyer-Zervin, who's a state rep, as you said, from the west side, near west side. Do you think either one of them has the potential to be sort of what we would want, I guess, an independent fiduciary overseer of city finances who would act on their own, almost as a maverick, and not just do whatever the mayor says? Well,
okay, so because there's so little power in that office, I don't know if being a maverick is how you make the most effective use of that office. Dick Simpson from UIC, who I interviewed for the story, said that it really is important to maintain a good relationship with the mayor, and because you need to get the mayor's backing to get a lot of these big bold policy proposals done. So I don't really know how to speculate on your question, but I will say that, like, speaking about each of these candidates, they're both proposing. I mean, Amaya Pawar is proposing some like very big policy ideas. So his number one thing he's running on is the idea of creating a public bank, which currently, I mean, there's only one place in America that has a public bank. That's the state of North Dakota, and their public bank has existed since 1999. It works in very kind of circumscribed ways. People can't get loans from it directly, but it finances some student loans and some other programs in the state, infrastructure projects, that kind of thing. There's kind of a growing movement around the country right now, and especially in California, to start up public banking. And back in the 19th century, public banks were quite common across the country. Illinois had one that financed various infrastructure projects, like the construction of some of the canals. So Mayor Pawar wants to create this public bank, which isn't, I mean, a lot of people are talking about how this is like an irresponsible idea in terms of what to do with taxpayer dollars. The capitalization of the bank, from what he described, would not just be like directly taking taxpayers' dollars, but like using investment returns. So the point is that that's not something they can do on their own. Like, you would need big changes in state law and city law. You'd need the state to grant a charter for the city to start a public bank. So this is like a big, bold vision, but it would need coordination and work with a lot of other actors, including the mayor, to get this done. But even I asked him, I was like, well, okay, so just like laying aside this kind of thing, like what would you do with the powers the office currently has? And his big promises are disinvesting from divesting from fossil fuels. So he wants to, like, as far as the city investment portfolio goes, he doesn't want there to be any investment in fossil fuels as part of the kind of a climate-oriented policy position. And the other thing is he wants to publish, which I was surprised it doesn't happen already, but he wants to publish reports on how much private financial institutions, private banks, charge the city in financing costs to manage their money. So
you would think they'd be doing that anyway.
You would think so, but apparently this is actually quite hard to figure out. How much interest are we getting charged? Like what Wall Street is charging us in fees, essentially, to manage our pension funds and manage our city dollars. And on the other hand, Melissa Conyers-Ervin, her big promise, day one in office, is that she would bring together the heads of the various private banks that are holding city money, those municipal depositories I mentioned, those 17 private banks that hold on to city money, that she wants to bring all the CEOs in and have a meeting with them, and she expects them to develop a plan for the unbanked population. And the other thing is she wants to add some credit unions to the municipal depositories list, because even if we put like a couple of $1 million in a credit union of the whatever billions of dollars that the city has in these private banks, her argument is that a few $1 million of city money in a credit union can go to offer mortgages and small business loans and others to underserved communities.
In either case, Mayor Pawar or Melissa Conyers-Ervin, there's going to be a new mayor of the city of Chicago. It'll either be obviously Tony Preckwinkle or Lori Lightfoot. So the basic dynamic may change. I don't know if it will. Rahm was following in the daily footsteps of a powerful mayor who tolerated no dissent and wanted all ideas to come through him so that he would get credit for all ideas. That's generally how the mayor's office has been run under Daley and Rahm so it's going back 30 years. I don't know, and none of us know really, how Tony Preckwinkle or Lori Lightfoot, if mayor, would be in regards to people like underlings, if you will, having the access to the pulpit to articulate new ideas, to promote new ideas. You know what I'm saying? If that fundamental dynamic changes between mayor and treasurer, we may see some of these ideas be discussed and analyzed. But if that fundamental idea doesn't change, Amaya, I feel as though they'll go back to being, a factotum.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people were speculating that Kurt Summers, before announcing that he wouldn't be running for re-election, that he would try to run for mayor of Chicago. And it's just, I feel like both of these candidates that are running for mayor now are like promising a brave, bold new day in the city. And I think that if they really do care first about the issues and not their own political ambitions, then it's in their interest to work with the treasurer. And I mean, you can have a debate all you want about the virtues of a public bank or the actual feasibility of forcing big banks to bank the unbanked population, which they have like zero interest in and have shown no interest in for decades. That you can debate the merits of these policies, but what I'm hopeful for is that whatever initiative this new treasurer will have won't be seen by whoever is on the 5th floor as like a potential danger zone of like, oh, this person is getting too big for their britches.
Yeah.
Like, we got to shut this down before they get too big and challenge me for mayor.
Yeah.
That seems absurd. That doesn't serve any of us.
It doesn't. And I don't know how realistic that is with either case. Lori Lightfoot's on record saying she won't serve more than 2 terms. And Toni Preckwinkle, how old is she? She's 74.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can't see her serving more than 2 terms either. So this notion, the last 2 mayors, you're right, were so afraid of anybody being seen as a potential rival because I guess they wanted to rule forever until they got tired of the office. All right, anyway, Maya, we have run out of time on this segment. We've got Rod Joy coming up. One more time, Maya and I will be live April 2nd, election night, 3630 South Iron. So I have the address right?
It's Mars Community Brewing in Bridgeport. It's 3630 South Iron Street. Yeah. And if I can plug one more thing, on Saturday, March 30th at 9 a.m., I will be co-moderating what could be the last mayoral forum of this election cycle, this never-ending election cycle. I'll be co-moderating this forum on housing issues with Alden Lowry from WBZ, and that'll be at Mount Pilgrim Baptist Church, 2976 South Wabash. Mm-hmm. It's a morning event. There were all kinds of scheduling problems, so apologies in advance to people who aren't morning people, but this is going to be an all housing issues debate. Yeah. We're just going to be talking about housing, and I really encourage folks to check this out. There's an event page for this on Facebook. It's called The Showdown for Chi-Town.
All right, The Showdown for Chi-Town.
And also, you guys are going to be in Bridgeport on the 2nd.
Yeah.
If everybody wants to get caught up on all the info going on in these elections.
Backroom Deal podcast.
Check out the Backroom Deal. It's on chicagoreader.com, right?
New episodes every day this week. Check it out on all your podcasting platforms.
So what has came out so far? We've had which wards?
We had a little catch-up episode on the mayoral.
Okay.
We checked in with all the wards we covered in season 1.
Okay.
We've had the 6th ward, and today we have an episode on the 25th ward that came out, and there's more coming this week.
Cool. All so right. 6th and the 25th out. Go check out the Backroom Deal.
All right, very good. Thanks so much, Maya. Rod Joy in the studio. We'll bring them on right after this.
Hey there, producer Dennis here. Thanks for finding and listening to the brand new Ben Joravsky Show. All right, so here's how this works. The Ben Joravsky Show live streams on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Once the show is over, you can listen to the replay on our YouTube channel, or we throw it online for you to download by 4 p.m. Where can you download the Ben Joravsky Show, you may be asking yourself? Well, you may be asking yourself a fantastic question. You can find previous Ben Joravsky shows and guest interviews through several outlets. The Chicago Sun-Times Online, chicago.suntimes.com, the Chicago Reader Online, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, pick one. Just search for The Ben Joravsky Show. J-O-R-A, V as in victory, S-K-Y. So, let's recap. Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Live streamed on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel and downloadable by 4 at chicago.suntimes.com, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts. Yes, the Ben Joravsky Show is back. We're live and downloaded. Tell your friends and enjoy the rest of the show. Hey there, producer Dennis here. Hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show for Tuesday, March 26th is just moments away. But before we get into said hour number 2, we got to thank the following unions for helping make the Ben Joravsky Show return. All right, first up, it's the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, not Aerosmith workers. Local 126 and District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Big thank you to those unions for making this show return. And, of course, today's show brought to you by our dear friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2 of the Ben Joravsky Show, Rod Joy coming up, is happening right now. Yes, it is Tuesday, March 26th, and live from the Chicago Reader, Chicago Sun-Times studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, it's former Illinois Lieutenant Gubernatorial candidate and dear friend Rod Joy. And we take the deep dive with teacher/7th Congressional District candidate Anthony Clark. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist, Ben Joravsky.
Yes, indeed. Rod Joy in the studio, the pride and joy of Evanston High School. 1991, I want to say he was on that offensive line that plowed over New Trier.
Defense.
Oh,
but,
defense.
You know, it's all good. That was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago. I can't remember anything, but Rod said he'll come on the show if I promise not to talk about his glory days at Evanston High School. Isn't that right? The deal we cut?
That's right. Yes.
So I just could not resist my. He also brought his brackets. Are these your predictions?
No. So my basketball bracket is broken.
Okay.
But when it comes to the March Madness of this political season, I'm looking pretty good, Ben. I'm looking pretty good.
Really?
Yes.
So what have you predicted? What did you predict?
Well, you know my good friend Lori Lightfoot.
Yes, you were. I could. By the way, folks, if you could see this man is surrounded by Lori Lightfoot.
We're bringing in the light, Ben. We're bringing in the light.
Okay, yes. A Lori Lightfoot supporter.
Yes, and you know I go way back with Lori, and it was an honor to stand by her side when she announced her candidacy for mayor. Really excited about this moment. I predicted that she would be here in a runoff.
Well, you were the one person in the city of Chicago who made that prediction, Ra.
I just thought it would be against Rahm, you know. So, but here we are.
Yeah. Well, that point should not just be completely lost. Everybody knows that I had tremendous respect for the candidates who had the guts to get in the race. I call them the original gangsters. They had the guts to get in the race when Rahm was still very prevalent. And all of them, Willie Wilson, Paul Val. I may not agree with every one of them on every issue, but they had the courage to go up against the big guy.
Yes.
And Lori Lightfoot was one of those candidates as well. Before we get into the mayor's race, why you were for Lori Lightfoot and your thoughts, I got to ask you about Bobby Rush's comments from the weekend. Ra, let's just remind folks a little bit about you. It was your first run for office. You chided me when I said he's one of my favorite politicians because you said you're a public servant, not a politician. I don't know why people have such a bad attitude toward the word politicians. That's a subject for another time.
Well, we can, hopefully while I'm here, we can talk about our political culture. And I think our political culture in Chicago contributes to this bad rap that politicians have.
All right, we'll talk about the political culture, but just to remind folks, you ran with Chris Kennedy.
Yes.
You were the lieutenant gubernatorial candidate. He was the gubernatorial candidate. That was your first run for office, correct?
Correct.
And so what conclusions did you emerge with from having run for office once?
Politics ain't beanbag. How about that?
Yeah.
I think I was with Chris last night. He wanted me to tell you hello.
Tell Chris I said hi.
You know, I think I want to talk about Lori's campaign, but I will say I think our run helped set the stage for the public narrative around this race for mayor. You know, the fundamental premise of our campaign is that the status quo has failed us miserably. And instead of a government that serves all people, we have a system where a tiny handful of political insiders wield disproportionate power. And essentially, that's the framework of Lori Lightfoot's campaign. It's changing the status quo. And I'd like to think that some of the work that we did on our campaign, in addition to helping get Fritz Kagi into office, help set the stage for what's playing out right now in Chicago.
Fritz Kagi, of course, is the Cook County assessor. He defeated Joe Barrios in the March primary. It's already been a year, Rod Joy.
Can you believe that?
No, I cannot believe it. Yeah. It's already been a year since that March 2018 primary. You talk a little bit. By the way, what have you done since then? Fill folks in a little bit of what your life has been like since the March 2018 primary.
Well, we took some time to step away from Chicago. We went out to the West Coast. My wife is from Seattle. We figured we needed a moment to kind of catch our breath. We've had an opportunity to really unwind a little bit, get away from the hustle and bustle and drama associated with the city and the political life of the city. Mm-hmm. We have a place out there that's surrounded by nature. It's really close to the water. It's less harsh in every way imaginable. So a lot of long walks, a lot of time experiencing the healing power of nature. But I'm here now, and Chicago is the center of the political universe. And I will say, thinking back, it's so good to have you back on the air, man. It's so good to have you back on the air in this political moment. And for those of you who haven't been in the studio yet, it seems like you moving up like the Jeffersons, man. It's a nicer deal, man. You got a nice setup here.
Yeah, nice setup.
This is the high rent district down here.
By the way, I love George Jefferson. Okay, let me just get that out there. I love George Jefferson. He had a good attitude toward life.
There are consequences when you speak truth to power.
Yes, there are.
And to connect the dots between our political life and the media industry, oftentimes it's easy to find people who take orders. It's not so easy to find people who take risks. And it's really great to have your voice back on the airwaves in this moment, in this city. And so hats off to you for finding a workaround. Hats off to the Sun-Times, the Reader, all of your supporters, because we need to reimagine political life in this city. We're so used to a certain way, and I think your question about Bobby Rush and his incendiary comments play into the old school way of politics, and we need to really expand the boundaries of our civic imaginations and demand a better kind of politics in this city. And we are, that is within reach. We are 1 week away from this historic election. It's like 168 hours away from a paradigm shift in our city. And so it's great that you're back on the air, and I appreciate you opening your doors and inviting me back in.
Oh, thank you very much, Rod Joy, for those comments. And let's get at what Bobby Rush had to say. It was this Sunday. It blew my mind when I heard it, and been thinking about it ever since. It was at, you have the comments, why should I read them? Dennis has the exact comments himself. Why don't you play it, D?
And everybody who votes for Lori, the blood of the next young black man or black woman who's killed by the police is on your hands.
All right. Anybody who votes for Lori, he said, the blood of the next young black man or woman who's killed by the police is on your hands. Rod Joy, your thoughts?
I think that's sad, and I think it's desperate. 91,000 people voted for Lori Lightfoot. I would anticipate that more are going to vote for her in round 2. To make that kind of statement, that's gutter politics, man. I think I'm signing on to a letter today, along with a number of civic leaders in Chicago, demanding more from Toni Preckwinkle and her campaign. She holds a leadership position in the city and in the county, regardless of the outcome of April 2nd. And in order to solve the big problems that are facing our city, we need to bring people together. It's an old school strategy to divide Chicagoans in order to preserve the status quo and consolidate power. And I think this is a really sad move in what's been really disappointing campaign season when it comes to the campaign that I think Toni Preckwinkle is running. If she were running to become the chair of the Cook County Democratic Party, then her campaign would make sense. But when you're running to be mayor of Chicago, we don't have time for that. Lori, and one of the reasons why I was proud to support her was I was of the mind that she is a unique figure that has the potential to cobble together a really different kind of coalition in this city. And it took a long time to get to this point, but I think you can see the kind of campaign she's running, which is bringing people together, North Side, South Side, West Side. I think it says a lot, although endorsements are not what's going to get you into office. It's voters. But it says a lot that 7 of her once mayoral rivals have leaned in and joined Team Lightfoot. It's time to bring people together to solve problems. It's not time to broker in the politics of fear and division.
One of the things that I found most bizarre about the comments that Bobby Rush made is that Bobby Rush endorsed Bill Daley in round 1.
And Blair Hall. He endorsed Blair Hall. Don't forget about that.
Yeah. Back in
the day.
Yeah, back in the day against Barack Obama for Senate. But just sticking with this current theme, he endorsed Bill Daley. And when I listened to it, I thought about it. I was just trying to take the implications. You know, you hear somebody say, follow the implications. So he's saying that this is a paramount moment for the city of Chicago. You absolutely positively have to endorse, vote for his candidate, Tony Preckwinkle, over Lori Lightfoot if you want to have any hope to change the police culture in this town, which is an interesting comment, given that he endorsed Bill Daley. The Daleys, I don't want to get you in a fight with the Daleys.
Yeah,
but
look at you now. I'm squirming over here.
Yeah, the Daleys ruled the city for years.
Lock the door.
Yeah. So it's like, I wonder, would he have made these comments if it was Lori Lightfoot against Bill Daley? Would he have said, this is a paramount moment. If you want to change the relationship between police and black communities, you have to vote for Bill Daley?
Yeah, right. Well, you know what that is. And, you know, in theory, our politics and these elections should be a battle of ideas. You know, we should be spending all of our time talking about how we solve the toughest problems facing the city, not the name calling and the divisive, nasty brand of politics that we see day after day after day. And it started from Jump Street, you know, when you try to block candidates from appearing on the ballot. And I had a lot of friends in this race, you know, and I had a lot of reporters reach out to me to share the news that the Tony Preckwinkle and her campaign were peddling opposition research on a number of candidates in the race, including some friends of mine. You know, I think I heard you on the air giving credit to the Sun-Times and the Sun-Times endorsement as a pivotal moment in the campaign. I also think a seminal moment was when Rob Martwick was dispatched to a press conference of Lori's. Like that's a bully tactic. And, you know, again after again, we see an effort to drag people down instead of lift people up. And I think Tony doubled down on that on February 26th by coming right out of the gate and criticizing Lori in a way that was incredibly harsh and unnecessary.
All right, let me deal with a criticism that I think there is some merit to it. I'd love to get your response on this. By the way, just to help people out, Rob Martwick is a state representative from the northwest side of Chicago, and in the first round of the race, he confronted Lori Lightfoot at one of her campaign appearances regarding a bill that he had about the assessor's office turning into an appointee office. Rob Martwick, a friend of the show. Lori then facetiously sent out a tweet. I don't know if you saw this.
Yeah, happy birthday. Was it
a happy birthday?
Happy
Thanks,
birthday.
Rob. I mean, Rob, come on, you did help her. But with that press conference. All right, one criticism about Lori Lightfoot that I've heard many times, and comes from many young activists I know, and it is this: that when she was on the police board, she did not show enough empathy or sympathy for the relatives of people who had been killed by police officers. She did not show just like a human connection. I know some good young activists that have been putting this on their Facebook page and sending me emails urging me to extol the virtues, or they really don't want me to extol the virtues of Tony Preckwinkle. They just want me to criticize Lori Lightfoot on this point. I'm sure you've heard these criticisms about Lori. What's your reaction to
So
that?
I guess, first of all, in terms of our city, I think we desperately need leadership that listens. You know, we are coming up on 8 years of leadership that did not listen. I will say personally, there are quite a few things that I appreciate and admire about Lori, and one is her compassion for people, in particular people who suffer. Lori and her family were there for me and my family when we were experiencing horrific pain and trauma. But you don't have to take my word for it. I'd encourage people to talk to Albert Cleveland. Albert Cleveland, I think he was 19 years old, was wrongly convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 45 years behind bars. And it was Lori Lightfoot who leaned in and worked on his behalf for 4 years to get him from behind bars. There are lots of things that I really admire about Lori, and I think that criticism is not fair. I know she cares about people, and particularly people who are suffering.
Just to remind people, if they, or maybe educate them if they didn't know, Roz, I believe he's 23 years old at the time. Xavier Joy was killed last year. It was on the, where was it? I think it was on the south side. The details of
it was in Woodlawn.
Woodlawn, yeah, have escaped me. A very promising, talented, bright young man, Whitney Young grad. And so anyway, that's what Ra was alluding to. You talk, Ra, about the political culture of the city of Chicago. Go into a little more detail about that.
Well, I think it's interesting because there's been a lot of talk about the code of silence. We talk about the code of silence. To go back to street violence, and sometimes people talk about there's a code of silence that discourages people from coming forward and sharing information in order to solve crimes. Certainly there's been a lot of attention on a code of silence within the police department. I think you could make a case that there's a code of silence within the Cook County Democratic Party when it comes to some of the corruption that's played out. Instead of serving people, we have a system where insiders are benefiting themselves. And just to give you a few examples that I think create a really bright line of distinction between Lori Lightfoot and Tony Preckwinkle let's start with Joe Barrios. You spend a lot of time with Chris Kennedy. If you spend more than 5 minutes with Chris Kennedy, he's going to open up about our broken local property tax system that's punishing black and brown communities in this city. It's a Robin Hood scheme in reverse, where Joe Barrios is going in and robbing the hood and sending money to affluent homeowners. I think that's one example, and I think another example is this whole messy situation with Ed Burke. I mean, people see that for what it is, and it hasn't been addressed. I think Lori and Tony are going to have their 5th debate tonight, and these issues have never gone addressed. To have a situation where they're in a federal case, there's a $10,000 contribution that's steered to her campaign. That was part of a political shakedown. The fact that Ed Burke hosted a fundraiser for Tony Preckwinkle in his home that raised over $116,000. The fact that Tony Preckwinkle helped get Ed Burke's kid $100,000 plus a year job, that stinks. That stinks. And it's never been addressed. It's kind of like a code of silence. I think I heard Tony on the radio today that says if you don't acknowledge a problem, you can't solve it. Like, people are sick and tired of that politics as usual in this city. And that's to come back to that Rob Martwick episode. People wonder, when push comes to pull, are you going to favor political insiders, or are you going to stand up for ordinary people? And if you watch that tape, when your friend of the show, Rob Martwick, approached Lori Lightfoot, she did not back down. She stood up to a political bully. And she has the courage to fix these broken systems. It seems like some people, their leadership model is look the other way. We can't afford that any longer.
Rod Joy, one of the ideas, you talk about a campaign of ideas, you alluded to that a little while ago. One of the ideas that emerged, my favorite idea that emerged from the Chris Kennedy, Rod Joy campaign, and I've been harping on it ever since. Kennedy articulated it. He said it. He put it out there. He may have regretted it saying it because it took a life of his own, but he directly accused Mayor Rahm, the planning policies of Mayor Rahm, of forcing black people out of the city of Chicago, essentially raising the cost of living in the city of Chicago. We've seen a tremendous decline in the black population. You know this as well as I do, Ra, over the last 20 years. And I believe those planning decisions, I applauded Kennedy for saying that. I believe those planning decisions are still very much alive in the as Mayor Rahm runs out the office with this big Lincoln Yards TIF deal. Are you confident, you've endorsed Lori Lightfoot, are you confident that Lori Lightfoot has the wherewithal to change some of these planning decisions where we finance development in gentrifying areas, thus raising the cost of living in the city of Chicago?
For sure. You know, I think this campaign is all about fairness and doing what's right for ordinary people. You know, I think Harold Washington had a great quote about fairness, that no one in this city, no matter where you live or how you live, is free from the fairness of our administration. And I think that's a mantra that Lori would carry forward. And I think that's how we make change happen. First and foremost, we have to fix these broken systems, whether it's the local property tax system, whether it's fixing the aldermanic prerogative or aldermanic privilege, which I think has been used to block affordable housing and maintain segregated neighborhoods, whether it's putting term limits in place on the mayor and on committee chairs. In order to make change happen, we have to fix our broken systems, and Lori is willing to do that.
Rod Joy is my guest. He was the lieutenant gubernatorial candidate along with Chris Kennedy. I can't believe a year has gone by. I'm going to lock the door, and I won't let Rod Joy out because I got more questions I want to ask him. But first, we're going to take this break.
If you would like to advertise with the Ben Joravsky Show, and who wouldn't, contact Tracy Baim at publisher@chicagoreadercorp.com. We have several advertising options for your business or organization, and quite frankly, we would love nothing more than to tell our listeners all about it. Once again, that's Tracy Baim at publisher@chicagoreadercorp, that's CORP as in Paul.com, to advertise with the Ben Joravsky Show, the Chicago Reader, and the Chicago Sun-Times. We look forward to plugging you. Okay, well, that came out kind of weird. More of the Ben Joravsky Show live and downloaded in moments.
When you lose a loved one whose wishes were to be cremated, Chicagoland Cremation Options provides your family a dignified and affordable cremation service. Chicagoland Cremation Options helps you bypass the expensive overhead of a funeral home or cemetery by streamlining the cremation directly. It saves you sometimes thousands of dollars. Chicagoland Cremation Options Crematory, just south of O'Hare, 5 minutes west of Chicago. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend Douglas Klein. You can find them at ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
All right, let me see. Commercial break over. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Rod Joy in the studio with me. We've been talking a lot of mayoral politics. Maybe throw some national politics at Rod Joy. See what he thinks about the upcoming presidential race. I always like to talk national politics. And how about old Donald Trump trying to weasel out of any wrongdoing allegations and now counterattack the Democrats. See what Rod has to say. And maybe ask him a question or two about aldermanic prerogative, a favorite topic of Chris Kennedy. If Chris Kennedy were in the studio right now, half hour on aldermanic prerogative. But before we do any of that, the doctor's got an update for us.
Absolutely, guys. We're just going to go to you. And yes, I'm talking to you, the Ben Joravsky Show listener. How's it going today, listener? Oh, yeah? Really? You know, it's getting warmer out there. Pretty awesome, huh? All right, let's check our social media pages. First off, Ben, we're almost to 1,000 likes on the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page.
Well, considering they blew up our old Facebook account.
We were at like 4,000 on the last one.
Man, we were killing it on that other one, and then boom, they blew it up.
Back to square one. It's a grassroots campaign, people. I'm not hitting like boost likes or whatever. We're not paying money to have people like our page. We're almost at 1,000. So if you're listening to this right now, whether you're live streaming or listening on the download, and you've yet to like the Ben Joravsky Show on Facebook, today is the day. Maybe it's because you can't spell that crazy last name of his. Well, we got you covered. Ben, spell that.
Jorav as in victory, SKY.
Jorav as in victory, SKY. Or you can find us at Benny J Show on both Twitter and Facebook. By the way, how's that Ben Joravsky Show Instagram account coming, Ben? I'm in charge of the Facebook and Twitter. He's in charge of Instagram. How's it going?
I put up a picture the other day.
Oh, how many likes are we at there?
I forget. I don't know how many. I put a picture of my good buddy Ed Pipes, Coach Pipes from the Rwanda national team.
No pressure, Pipes. We need more likes on that Instagram, all right? So hopefully that can help us out. Yeah. All right, so he's okay.
He's
Mr.
working
Pipes,
on it.
Working on it. Good. And speaking of those pages, we're asking all of you on our Twitter and Facebook page a simple question. Tonight on Fox 32 is the 5,000th debate between Tony Preckwinkle and Lori Lightfoot. So many of these debates. My goodness, change. They're all about change. We know that.
Change.
But we're asking all of you on both Facebook and Twitter pages, is there a question or issue that has yet to be discussed in these debates?
Rod Joy that one, yeah.
Is there a question or concern, issue that is yet to be asked or debated on in these debates? Head over to the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page at Benny J Show or on Twitter, also at Benny J Show. We have a few people who left comments here, so let me just pull them up real quick, and we will see what you, the Ben Joravsky Show listener, is saying. Yeah, where the hell did it go? Okay. Oh, wait. No. All right. We're going to have to give me some more time here if... Going to find that on Facebook. I know someone wanted... here we go. Okay, here we go. On the Facebook page, Alan says, will you as mayor slow or stop gentrification?
Well, that was the issue I was getting at with Ra when I talked about whether, what Lori could do on that at Light regards to Chris Kennedy's comments, where Chris Kennedy said the planning policies of the Rahm Emanuel administration were intended. That was the whole point of the policies, to fuel gentrification and force poor working class people out of the city of Chicago. I go one step beyond Chris. I told Chris this. I go, Rahm inherited these policies from Richard M. Daley, and Ra, please be more less cynical than I am, less skeptical than I am. I'm always the way money operates in this town, the way power really operates in this town, it's very hard for me, having witnessed politics in Chicago since the early 80s, to think things can change. You think they can change?
I do. I think the formula to make change happen in my mind is, first of all, you have to fix the broken systems. The second thing you have to do is organize in a different way. You have to get people to set aside their own issues and lock arms for the greater good. And you have to get more people, more ordinary people, to roll up their sleeves and actively climb the ladder of civic engagement. Our political culture breeds cynicism. It breeds disengagement. People are often apt to tune out what's happening in politics, and we have to turn that on its head. I do think, Chris and I had a lot of conversations about this frame of strategic gentrification, and certainly you can't argue with the numbers that people are being pushed out of the city of Chicago, forced to leave the city they love. And Chris often had a line that, that for his family, if you close the neighborhood schools, if you force people to live in a food desert, if crime is consolidated, focused on a handful of neighborhoods, he had a view that there's an 88 rule where 80% of the crime happens in 8% of the neighborhoods. If you close mental health facilities, if you force people to live in pharmacy deserts, if there is no neighborhood hospital, people are going to vote with their feet and move away. And that's what's happening in the city of Chicago. We had a difference of opinion about the frame. Like, I think it's about structural racism and the systems that are built upon a misguided mythology that there's a hierarchy of human value that's based upon skin color. And I think that that misguided mythology influences every aspect of daily life in our city, from housing to education, to jobs, to the air we breathe, to the water we drink. And that's a focus of this campaign, is around fixing those broken systems and addressing the structural inequality that exists in Chicago.
Structural rights embedded in the very system itself.
All right, and we'll do one more question here as we get our guest, Anthony Clark, all set up here. Now, the question again, since there's been 500 of these debates between Preckwinkle and Lightfoot, are there any questions or concerns that you've yet to hear these two discuss? Frank, shout out to Frank. Yes, Ben, that Frank.
Oh, I love Frank.
Hey, Frank,
That's
how's it
my
going? He says, Miss Lightfoot, if you were the mayor, what would you do to combat food deserts? And Alderman Scott Wagaspack says a good lawyer can get us out of the pay the park deal. Do you support getting us out of the pay the park deal?
Oh, yes. Boy, I'll tell you what. Lori Lightfoot is a corporate lawyer. She's been working in that sector for many, many years. I really wish she were the mayor. When I think about the skill set that she brings, Joy, to the office, if she were elected, let's say, in 2011, because that was the moment to put your mind on that parking meter deal that so many people in the city of Chicago despise, because it just sort of symbolizes everything we've been talking about, how much expensive it is in the city of Chicago just to park your car. If you don't pay that meter, and the money doesn't even go to the city of Chicago, it goes to these privatizers who own our parking meters. And if you don't pay off the meter, then you get a ticket. And if you don't keep paying off your tickets, they're going to snatch your car. And this is just sort of emblematic of where the city has been going for the last 20 years. And when I talk about the policies of the city of Chicago have raised the cost of living in the city of Chicago and forced people out of the city of Chicago. And I think Lori Lightfoot, or a person like Lori Lightfoot, or even if you just had a mayor who hired somebody with a corporate lawyer to go after that parking meter deal in 2011 instead of doing what Rahm did and was essentially rubber stamping it again. That's when we could have used her. Yeah, the Denver food, yeah. All right, Anthony Clark is in the studio, the pride and joy of Oak Park, and he'll join the conversation. Ra has been good enough to say he'll stick around when we're done talking to Anthony about some of the local issues and maybe broaden the conversation to discussion about what the Democrats can do looking forward to the 2020 election. Donald Trump has sort of laid down the law, how he's going to go on a counterattack against the Democrats, how he's going to snatch Obamacare away from the He thinks that's a winning ticket somehow or other, Anthony Clark and Rod Joy. So we'll get into all those national issues. But Anthony, first of all, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be back.
Always good to see you in the studio. And when I reached out to you, I forget when it was, Anthony, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, you were in the news. And I don't know what the resolution is that. So why don't you tell folks about what happened to you at Oak Park? We were a teacher at Oak Park High School.
Most recently, I just came off a 2-week suspension at Oak Park. It was paid suspension, so it wasn't that bad. But I was on suspension. The school district, the institution, essentially framed an issue around I was being, I guess, blamed for preparing students to protest. Preparing students to activate and use their voices in regard to various systemic issues that they had problems with. So I got a little vacation time for that.
Did you think it was a bum rap?
No question. I think it was a bum rap. I mean, clearly I'm back at work now, and now I'm on spring break, so my march was extremely short in terms of working. But again, anytime you want to blame me for empowering students to utilize their voices, go right ahead. I'll take that rap every day.
Yeah, well, I guess the general idea is that students wouldn't have the wherewithal to do it on their own, so they need an adult to lead them. But you're saying that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, I don't know how much time we have, but I think it even plays into the systemic issues, again, that exist and the narratives that we create, because it's interesting. Last year, when primarily white students led the March for Our Lives in the local community and nationally, as a teacher who believes in demonstrations, who believes in activation, I helped similarly. But yet there weren't any of the negative feedback and bounce back from the community because, again, I think it's a different narrative and when primarily white students lead, protest, and activate. But this year, it was around the Trayvon Martin issue. If you're familiar with Oak Park and the surrounding communities, there have been a lot of issues of racism that have happened this past year. I was attacked directly. I think you remember earlier in the year we discussed that in regard to swastikas and different things like that via social media and graffiti. But now you have primarily black and brown students activating, and it tends to make individuals uncomfortable. And I think we live in a society, even on the liberal and progressive side, where people tend to say they want change, But if it gets to the point where they have to, again, look themselves in the mirror, you know, they have to get uncomfortable and they can't dictate and control what they change looks like, sort of like the Colin Kaepernick theory in a sense, like, yeah, that's an issue, but you can't kneel. And I think that's what we got to. They don't want black and brown students out there in the streets leading.
In addition to being a teacher, Anthony Clark was a candidate for Congress in the 7th Congressional District, which is, folks, if you can just follow me, it's a district that stretches from, it goes down to the Loop in Chicago, right? Doesn't go all the way into Oak Park.
You know, gerrymandering.
Yeah,
I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, it goes to the Loop, it goes down to Inglewood, goes back doors all the way out west towards Westchester. So I mean, we have suburbs, we have a disproportionate amount of wealth, you know, distribution within the district. And on one end, you will have food deserts and 16.4% unemployment rate, and then you have Oak Park, Illinois, with 2 grocery stores, 3 grocery stores, and high employment rate. So it's ridiculous.
And we were talking to Ra about, it's been a full year since the primary of 2018. He was, of course, running with Chris Kennedy.
He was.
We saw each other in all of the forums.
Right. We became homies. We became cool.
And Anthony Clark ran in the 7th Congressional against the veteran Danny K. Davis.
Correct.
So first question before I go into other issues, are you thinking of running again?
We are. I can't lie to you and say, I think anytime that you make a decision to run for office, one, it's a huge decision to make. But when you recognize the power dynamics that exist and how, what I term the machine and how, incumbents control that power, you recognize you just can't run once. If you run, I think you lay down a foundation, you build name recognition, because oftentimes that's why incumbents continue to win, based upon that power control and name recognition has been built up over decades and decades. But it's by design. I mean, we see what the DCC just came out with in regard to informing, different institutional organizations not to work with, candidates like myself and so on and so forth. So they try to control that. So again, yeah, we're definitely thinking about and considering another run for it. We think we did extremely well for the first time, not knowing what the hell we were doing. We were nominated to run. I never thought I would be a politician or want to be a politician, but I think it's about taking the micro fight in regard to the systemic issues and expanding it to the macro level, because nothing changes systemically unless you truly attack policy. So yeah, we're definitely considering it.
All right, so let me just get a calendar in my mind. Then that race would kick into gear. Oh my goodness, it would be right around the corner.
Like now,
right?
Yeah, I have like a day.
You have a day. Oh, you can announce you're running right
30
now.
30 minutes. I'm thinking I'm counting down, but no, it's going to be extremely soon. And I think I don't know if you're aware of. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, of course, she won her race. We came through with brand new Congress, just as Democrats. So many other wonderful individuals: Cori Bush in St. Louis, Paula Jean Swearengin in West Virginia, Amy Viella in Las Vegas, and so many others. But it's a huge movie that's coming out. We actually just got back from what's that film festival? I forgot. I was there, and it was a big deal. Sundance Film Festival.
You were out to Utah, huh?
So we were out to Utah. The movie premiered. I mean, everybody was crying.
Was it Breaking the Houses?
Knocked Down the House.
Knocked Down the House. That will, by the way, be in Chicago at the Davis Theater.
Yes.
In April, I want to say.
I think April, and I think it drops officially like May 1st. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's going to be huge.
Yeah.
Like I'm the only male in the film to like even have a speaking part. Like I just say something briefly.
I did not know you were in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you'll see me, and then I say something briefly. So I think that's huge for me.
Yeah.
Ally.
But you're also in that Steve James movie.
Oh yeah, definitely.
A Star is Born.
So, episode 8, check me out.
Yeah.
Definitely. So again, but I think that movie's going to be huge, and I think that's going to play a major role in helping grassroots candidates.
Well, here's one of my favorite themes, and I'm going to ask the question. I think I may have asked this of you the last time we were, or maybe we just asked you on the phone, we're chatting, and that is this: why in New York did you have that breakthrough with Ocasio-Cortez defeating in a Democratic primary a pretty liberal Congressman Joe Crowley, I think his name was, from Queens area, but here in Chicago, very hard, very hard for an insurgent to defeat an entrenched incumbent. What's going on here in the city of Chicago?
Well, first and foremost, I have to be honest and say, AOC is dope as hell. I mean, she was a super dope, candidate. I mean, she's extremely intelligent, extremely motivated. And I think what happened was with the movement, quite honestly as well, like losses like myself, which occurred before her, her primary race and things of the nature, you learn, because we were working together, we were communicating online via chat rooms, so on and so forth. So I think you pay attention and then you coalesce all that information, all those failures. And I think that helped as well. I think boroughs in New York are kind of different from districts here in a sense. Like boroughs are more, I guess not easily walkable in a sense, but everything's more centered in a sense in New York. So you have a borough where you could just hit, like, how do I go from essentially Oak Park all the way to Inglewood and back to Westchester, so on and so forth in the district. I think corruption exists everywhere, but corruption's a little thicker and a little bit different in the Chicago area. And I think something, I know I was walking in and hearing you all talk, I think something we also have to talk about as well is how even the Democratic Party benefits from voter suppression.
For sure.
You know, how that plays a role in, again, maintaining that power within the system, within machine politics, because in Chicago, I mean, voter suppression is huge in regard to, if we look at that last election cycle, you know, the age range, the demographics of individuals that came out and voted. Of course, we're constantly talking about millennial voting, you know, what's the next generation, Generation Z voting, and so on and so forth. We have to give them something to vote for, one, but I think that incorrect narrative exists that our youth aren't out there and activated. They are. You know, they're in the streets, they're activated, but I don't think we're necessarily motivating them to vote because they're not dumb. They recognize everything is by design. You know, whether it's Democrat or Republican, they feel like they're losing. You know, I think it goes back to that, something that makes me mad sometimes is when you're on social media and I see posts, you know, in regard to nationally, well, if Hillary would have won, you know, we'd all be at home right now drinking coffee. No, I wouldn't. You know, I would still be oppressed. And so many other people would still be oppressed. You may have felt more comfortable in the sense of whoever posted that. So I think, you know, our youth are just looking for somebody to motivate them. And I think we just have to get in there and truly educate and focus on that.
All right, now, Anthony, I keep talking about you as being an Oak Park teacher and Oak Park resident, et cetera, but as you pointed out, the 7th Congressional District stretches into the city of Chicago. I'm unaware of this, so just let me know. Have you made an endorsement for mayor of the city of Chicago?
No, so one thing about that, not thankfully, but I'm in Oak Park, so I don't get a vote. You know, I'm not a Chicago resident, so even though running for congressional seat, yes, you know, I'll go into Chicago, I'll represent Chicago areas, but because I'm an Oak Park resident, I do not vote for the mayoral race, and quite honestly, that's less pressure on me. You know, I'm not necessarily extremely motivated by either candidate. I think for me, most importantly, is who has the best policy. I think we need to focus on that, particularly in the black community. You know, I'm truly interested in trying to create and develop a black agenda. And at this point, based upon where we're at, I truly feel that even though I'm a Democrat, black people, you know, any oppressed demographic of people, we need to really think about just moving to being independent and demanding that whatever party we may go with, like, show us, you know, why would you want our vote? Because right now, the Democratic Party, basically, they know they could count on, you know, the black support, the black vote. And yet and still we have decades and decades, you know, after the New Deal and we switched over from Republican to Democrat. What do we have to show for it? So, I mean, I don't know. This race is extremely difficult. You know, I'm seeing a lot of people struggle in regard to who to vote for, who to support. I have individuals on both sides that I highly respect, like Ra and others that, you know, have chosen one candidate or are supporting one candidate or other. But for me, I see problems with both candidates. And until I truly see policy that I feel like is aimed at changing things on a systemic level, you know, I don't really have a horse in the race.
Did you follow Bobby Rush's you talk about running in against an entrenched incumbent, Congressman Bobby Rush. His views on what a Lightfoot vote means.
Yeah, I mean, and it kind of confused me in a sense because where was that statement when you supported Daley? You know, can't you say the same thing in a sense when you endorsed the Bill Daley in the sense of that type of thought process of supporting police departments and the systemic issues within our police departments and so on and so forth. So again, it's politics as usual. You know, everybody, you know, jumps around and makes deals and so on and so forth. So I just implore people to do their own research. You know, I think you cannot, if you're sitting there and you're going to make your vote based upon, look, like I say, Ra's my homie. Like, I love Ra, but if you're going to sit here and make your vote just based upon hearing him once and say, well, I'm going for Lori, you know, that's incorrect. You need
bring
to
in the light, bring in the light.
Right, exactly. And I respect his opinion on that. You know, I know him, so he does his own research. But again, we're dealing with so many individuals that just base their information off of social media, off of a quick blurb or so on and so forth, of hearing somebody talk, or off of a pastor. We can go into that, but you know, pastors in the city and so on and so forth that may be getting checks from candidates and so on and so forth. So just do your own research, truly engage, and then make this decision based upon what you believe.
You know, listening to when you said pastors, it triggered something. And now, I know you always speak your mind, so I'm going to ask you this question. When at that debate with Carol Marine, when they were asked, what do you like about the other person? And I forget what Lori said about Tony. I think healthcare, how she unfolded healthcare. And then Tony said about Lori, well, I let she's honest about her sexual preferences.
Right.
Did you think that was a dog whistle?
I thought that personally. I thought that was a dog whistle
For sure.
Yes. I personally thought that was a dog whistle because again, we don't have enough time to get into a history lesson, but historically, I think we know the importance of the black church and the black community. When we came over on slave ships, our ancestors, again, religion was often used to pacify us and so on and so forth. But again, it's entrenched in our society. You go into a black community, there's about 2 or 3 churches on every block. So churches are extremely important. Religion is extremely important, and oftentimes that's adversarial, to the LGBTQ community and things of that nature, because many of us are being raised with certain belief systems based upon how we're deciphering the Bible. I myself consider myself an ally to the LGBTQI plus community. I try to be an ally in verb form, engaged in action. So when I heard that, I thought that was a strategic dog whistle, because one thing I can say, even though I haven't necessarily thrown my support by one candidate, Tony has ran one of the worst campaigns, and this is again my opinion, I'm making non-statements, but one of the worst campaigns I've ever seen or witnessed in recent memory. It's been, like my kids say, she's been taking L's after L's repeatedly throughout this campaign. So she has nobody to blame essentially but herself and her team. They need to look in the mirror and ask themselves, how did we get to this point?
And whether it's the Bobby Rush comment or that dog whistle comment, what comes to mind for me is, are we humanizing or dehumanizing people?
Right.
And I think we don't have any room to continue to dehumanize people.
Right, definitely. And I think another thing to jump on that, one thing I truly believe in, no one's freedom or no one's empowerment can come at the expense of someone else's freedom or empowerment. So I think that kind of played a role with Willie Wilson endorsing Lori, his, the church base that he comes with and rolls with. It was a dog whistle indeed to kind of call to them and say, hey, essentially, check that Bible, whatever psalm or verse you need to check. Do you really want to support a LGBTQI plus, candidate?
All right, I'm going to say this before we take a break. I believe the notion, I've said this so many times, I'm just going to say it again, that the black community is so much more homophobic than the white community is an exaggeration. You have a couple of loudmouths. I always believe that black people don't feel the same sense of political correctness that white people feel. And so you have a couple of loudmouths that'll say this, that, and the other thing about Adam and Steve or something like that. But I have never seen any evidence, Anthony Clark, in any election in my whole life that black people view a person's sexual preference.
Oh, no.
I've never seen any evidence of it.
No, it's not disproportionate, not at all. Not at all.
So I just think it's the whole thing is exaggerated. If it was a dog whistle, I don't think it really worked.
Oh, it definitely didn't.
All right, Anthony Clark and Rod Joy are my guests. You know what? We're going to take a break. We're going to bring it back, a little bonus section. We're going to move on to some national politics, pick their brain on what they think the best strategy is to deal with that president of ours. We'll be right back.
The Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by the Chicago Sun-Times. For the latest in Chicago and Illinois news, sports, weather, and the latest in national news from a real Chicago frame of mind and real Chicago writers, check out the Chicago Sun-Times. Read the daily paper or online at chicago.suntimes.com. And hey, if you have a little extra cash, subscribe. And by the Chicago Reader. For a deeper dive in the daily Chicago news and for all of what's going on in this city, you gotta read The Reader. Music, arts and culture, film, extensive event calendars, concert listings, and more, including weekly political columns from writers like Maya Dukmasova and, yes, our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader is free in newsstands and at chicagoreader.com. That's chicagoreader.com. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Mr. Joravsky, man, take us home.
All right, you know what? I love that song. That's Anthony Clark, by the way, playing piano. No one plays the piano like Anthony Clark.
Get down. Little Smokey. I don't know. Did Smokey play the piano? I don't think
No, Smokey did not play.
I just do his name. It was random.
By the way, there is a video going around. My wife showed it to me yesterday on Facebook, and I don't know if Pam showed this to you. It is a video of a woman singing in the New York subway. Have you seen this one, Ron? Midnight Train to Georgia, which is one of my favorite songs of all time. This lady kills it. It's just, she absolutely kills it. So, folks, if you see that video, check it out. She's just singing without instrumentation or anything. She's playing like the background choir or something, like acting like the Pips. Anyway, when I thought about Anthony Clark playing the piano, that just popped into my mind.
Well, Stevie Wonder, there you go. Stevie played the piano.
That is correct. Very
plays
good.
The piano.
He
Not
still
played.
plays.
Stevie's alive. Don't
Steve is very much alive.
You know how that happens. A post comes, oh, Stevie gone. Like, no, Stevie's here.
Don't get in trouble.
Right. Anthony said Stevie dead.
Yeah. There goes. That would kill the church vote right there. Okay. All right. So now Donald Trump. Curious little strategy on Donald Trump's part. As you know, the Mueller report came out. I can't remember when it came out, but I've been reading about it ever since. We have not actually seen the report. We've just seen a letter summarizing the report, a really sketchy summary from William Barr, the Attorney General, saying that although there's no evidence that he colluded with the Russians, he is not exonerating the president on other charges, particularly obstruction of justice charges. And immediately, Anthony Clark, Rod Joy, Donald Trump said, I've been fully exonerated, and now I'm going to counterattack the Democrats. What is your reaction to that? We'll start with you, Ron, then go to you, Anthony.
It's not a surprise that Donald Trump would take it in that direction. I think we have to release the report. I think there needs to be full disclosure, and nothing short of that, I think, will satisfy the American people.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be completely honest. Since the investigation launched, I don't want to say I could care less, but I think it's interesting how, again, in our society, we're constantly looking for scapegoats or someone to blame in a sense. Mm-hmm. So even if the report came out that, there was collusion, what does that still mean in regard to the systemic issues that we face? White supremacy, racism, so on and so forth. Okay, so you can possibly better create a narrative and an argument to get rid of or impeach Donald Trump, so on and so forth, charge him and his administration. But that's not going to stop 4 years from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, et cetera. Another administration coming into office that's going to continue to perpetuate the systemic issues that we face as a society. So again, I'm not surprised. I thought there was nothing there in the first place in a sense. But again, that doesn't stop Donald Trump from, again, engaging in dog whistling, perpetuating, white supremacy, racism, homophobia, Islamophobia, so on and so forth. I think that's the bigger issue at hand than the Mueller report.
Well, I'm not quite sure I agree with the point you made. You didn't think there was anything there in the first place. Yeah, I'm totally. Anthony Clark, I got to completely disagree with you on that point. What's your feelings, Ron?
Well, again, we need the full report to be disclosed, but without a doubt, it doesn't say that he was fully exonerated. That's what Trump made it out to be, but that's not what even the summary of the report said.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I definitely say, I don't want to say there's nothing there in regard to, Trump's like a snake oil salesman. I just watched a special last night on HBO about the runoff, that blood, what was that? I don't know if you saw that. You heard about this? So the young lady, she basically idolized Thomas Edison and lied about her blood patents and things of that nature, being able to process blood and blah, blah, blah. So, it's like that snake oil salesman in a sense. Like Donald Trump's a liar. Of course he cheated. But again, him cheating, what does that mean for the systemic issues that we fail to face as a society? This is the first time in history that I think even presidential candidates are talking about reparations. Mm-hmm. But are they bringing it up just, to become popular, or are they truly engaged and truly mean it?
Well, here's how I would respond to what you said, Anthony.
No collusion.
Thank you, Donald Trump. We were actually talking about this, Ra, before you got in here, the culture of corruption in the city of Chicago. And I believe there's, in the Donald Trump administration and this, in his campaign, a strong culture of corruption and lying and deceit. And it is perhaps one of the reasons why he has sort of captivated the imagination and support of so many people in this country. And I think that's very unfortunate. And I welcome any investigation into the Trump campaign, into do I believe that Donald Trump got on the phone with the President Putin of Russia and cut a deal? I don't believe he would be that obvious. Although But now that I just said that, anything is possible. They were alone together. So I welcome the investigation from just like sort of like a moral purpose. What I don't know, and then we move it to like a political strategy. Is it a shrewd political strategy? There's two separate issues. One, to really know what our government is up to, you know, to have transparency and full disclosure, et cetera. It's good. But politically, is it a sound strategy? I think that's what you were sort of getting at without saying
I mean, yeah, again, you know, for me, I'm still, you know, truly trying to unpack and articulate it. Because, I mean, okay, cool. So question for you, Ben, and maybe you too, Rob. I feel like our nation is built upon lies and deceit. You know, in my estimation, and again, I don't want people to take this wrong, Donald Trump is exactly the leader we deserve as a nation, based upon how we've operated throughout history. I mean, we're built upon white supremacy, genocide, and oppression. You see what I'm saying? So again, for me, we got to this point for a reason. You know, we could try to pinpoint Russia. We could try to pinpoint Hillary running a bad race. We could try to pinpoint all these red herrings and scapegoats. But we got here based upon the system that our nation is built upon. You know, I think that's my main issue is, yes, we could get so caught up in this Mueller report and the Russia investigation and things that Trump is saying and so on and so forth. But unless you're truly trying to get down a policy and changing the system and recognizing that, again, we led us here. The Republican Party and the Democratic Party both benefit from white supremacy. You see what I'm saying?
I would agree with Anthony about where you place your energy. And instead of pointing the finger at Trump, you need to point the finger at yourself and organize in a different kind of way. At the same time, we need to hold our leaders accountable. And I think when Trump says, I can go to Times Square and shoot somebody and there's no repercussions, I think he's operating under that model, that he is above the law, that the rules do not apply to him. And I think from that vantage point, I'd like to, again, see the full report released and there's some measure of transparency.
All right. Now, I'll ask you the question I was asking Anthony. From a strategic view, do you think it's politically wise for the Democrats to pursue this any further, or should they, in your humble opinion, back away from further investigation?
I think there should be a full court press to release the report. At the same time, I think there should be a focus on the urgent challenges that people are facing. There's a lot of suffering going on right now. And whether it's addressing some of the issues around structural inequality or even getting after infrastructure. Like, you would think that whether it's Trump or folks on both sides of the aisle, that there would be a concerted effort to get things done. And so I just wouldn't encourage Democrats to put all of their eggs in the basket of trying to take down Trump and impeachment.
And to directly answer your question, Ben, in my humble opinion, I would say back away. And one not a necessary analogy, but an example I could use is Willie Wilson had openly stated that he voted for Trump. You see what I'm saying?
Said it right here in this.
Yeah,
sitting in that chair where Rod Joy is sitting right now.
Has openly stated that he supported
Uncle Willie.
Uncle Willie has supported Ronner. Yeah. So for me, the Democratic Party has done such a horrible job in regard to, in the sense of empowering Black and brown and impoverished communities, whether it be socially or economically. You see what I'm saying? We haven't built generational capital within these communities. So when I was door knocking, for example, when I was running for my race, if I knock on the door in the Austin community or the Inglewood community, and I'm talking about Trump, it really has no impact in a sense, because these people are on the ground fighting food deserts, fighting gun violence, fighting lack of infrastructure investment, fighting school closures, mental health facility closures. They're living day to day. So a lot of these people could care less about a Mueller report. So if the Democratic Party truly wants to be a party that represents the everyday people, that truly empowers Black and brown and impoverished communities, I personally feel like we need to back away and truly invest in the people, truly put boots to the ground and see what's happening, because nothing changes on a national systemic level until it changes locally.
All right, you raising a lot of good points. Having said all that, keep investigating, Democrat. Come on, Anthony. You're not a reporter. You don't have those reporter instincts. Go get them, man. What's that?
But for you, as we talk about this, is getting rid of that plausible deniability.
Oh, yeah. That's Ed Pipes at the back said the plausible deniability. I'll tell you, Anthony, I got to tell you, it's just like, I hear everything you're saying. And you're saying ultimately that whether Donald Trump lied, whether Donald Trump conspired with Putin, whether Donald Trump fired Comey because he wanted to short circuit the investigation into him, whether Donald Trump, Lord knows what he did wrong, it doesn't affect somebody who is at sort of living in a very poor neighborhood in a very difficult situation. I understand exactly what you're saying, but because Trump did all those things, he seized control of power, which made that person that you're just not, whose door you just knocked on, their life that much more difficult, and makes them even more alienated from the system, and makes the system that much harder to knock down. So I believe, I guess this is just what I've done my whole life, Roger. I just believe the more light, the better. The more
bringing the light,
bringing the light.
Oh, no,
Right.
Bringing the light, Ra. Bringing the light, Ra.
I've been one of those Lori Lightfoot buttons.
You know what?
Hey.
That's subliminal because he's got these Lori Lightfoot bringing the light signs.
Ra's the ultimate hype man. it's like Biggie and Puff Daddy, like Puffy behind him, like. You know, ultimate hype man.
Come on now, Anthony. I was into that campaign you were talking about.
No, I know I'm messing with it, but no. So my counter argument then would be, again, you know, I can only speak for myself. I can only make I statements. From my viewpoint on the ground level, I truly don't believe Trump's election has changed that for the individuals that I'm discussing. You know, even as a black male, what I feel is important to understand is I think Trump's election has primarily changed it for those liberals and progressives that were ultimately in bubbles prior to his election. Trump's election has made them feel uncomfortable because the racism that was covert and has always existed is now in front of their face. So they don't have plausible deniability. There you go. So that's why this election is so important. I mean, this, you know, investigation and other things getting Trump out of office is so important to them, because if Hillary was in office or someone else that would maintain the same system. I just got pulled over yesterday by the police. Guess what? If Hillary would have been president, I would have been pulled over still. Nothing changes on the ground level for me as a black male in society, but what I do think it changes for those allies who aren't necessarily allies in verb form, who may go to a march on Saturday or Sunday, take a Facebook picture, tap themselves on the back, and go back to work in the same system that led to what they marched against. So it's that fake progressivism, it's that fake liberalism, you know, neoliberalism essentially. That's part of the problem.
Fake progressives of Oak Park in Chicago. Anthony Clark still wants your vote. All right, he may have thrown you in the mud there, but he still wants your vote.
If you want to.
You can't beat Danny Kenyatta Davis by throwing them out the right, Rod Joy?
Absolutely.
All right, now before we head out the door, I need to know a sense of: is there a candidate that you're really encouraged by for the 2020 race and these early goings, Anthony?
Right. Well, first and foremost, if I can quickly, you know, I've been helping individuals on the ground, boost to the ground with these Aldermanic races. So I would love to shout out a few candidates that I think are extremely important. Byron Lopez in the 25th Ward, running an extremely important grassroots race. Matt Martin, 47th Ward. Andre Vasquez, 40th Ward. Will Calloway, Will's the homie, in the 5th Ward, so on and so forth. So these individuals are truly, you know, boots to the ground, trying to take power from the establishment and the machine. We're seeing how Rahm right now is trying to coalesce around these incumbents and these candidates that are trying to push for privatization. Rahm's using a lot of his money right now through these PACs to launch attack ads and so on and so forth. So I want to shout out those candidates. If you don't know them, again, Byron Lopez, Matt Martin, Will Calloway, Andre Vasquez. Check them out. Local candidates in Oak Park, I see you all as well. You know, Erica, Tim, Christian, Cherie Moore, Artie, all you guys. So I just want to shout them out because they're doing a truly good job, and nothing happens nationally till it happens locally. I want to say that. In regards to 2020, I'm with Bernie right now, and I'll just leave it at that because, again, I'm about policy that changes things on a systemic level, not a repackaging of a Hillary Clinton in another form.
Were you a Bernie delegate last time? I just don't remember.
No, I was not a Bernie delegate last time, but, you know, listening to him and learning about him again, because I was one of those individuals, honestly, and I'm sorry, I'm going to stop after this. I was not necessarily engaged politically because, again, I thought, again, the game is fixed. The game is by design, but Bernie was the type of individual that enlivened me based upon the policies that he was pushing and the things he was saying.
All right, very good. Rod Joy.
So I will double click on the shout outs to majority of those Aldermanic candidates. And we were with Will Calloway just the other day in South Shore. And as you may know, his office was shot up yesterday. And so our thoughts are with him and his team.
Definitely. Prayers out.
And also want to give a shout out to Matt Martin and help kick off a canvas for him. And I think about the future of the city council, and to have a city council that has a Matt Martin and a Maria Hayden.
Yes, like Maria's dope too.
I mean, that's you have someone who is progressive activist, is a participatory budgeting guru. Like, her victory on February 26th, I think, sent a really powerful signal about a new type of leadership.
49th Ward, duly elected alderman.
And then, of course, what's top of mind for me is electing Lori Lightfoot the next mayor of Chicago. We're 7 days away. We're 7 days away.
Right.
And I will say that Anthony talked about throwing his hat in the ring.
Yeah.
It's tough to run for office. It's really tough when you're running against an incumbent who is deeply entrenched in the Democratic Party. That takes a special kind of courage. And for Anthony to throw his hat in the ring and then still have the courage to go back at it and do it again, hats off to you.
And hats off to you as well, Ross.
And I will say that on the Bernie front, with that same logic, the fact that he has a national infrastructure, the fact that he can raise small dollar donations, I think his candidacy is incredibly strong at this point.
All right, very good. That's Rod Joy, Anthony Clark. We'll continue the conversation and welcome both of you back to the show as the year unfolds. Oh, my God, so many guests to thank today. Maya Dukmasova left the room, but she did a great job. Ed Pipes, the man, the myth, the legend from Rwanda. Well, not really from Rwanda, from Cincinnati, but he's coaching in Rwanda now. Miles Porter, our excellent editor, did a great job. And, of course, the man, the myth, the legend behind the board, the pride of joy of Alton, Illinois. The ladies all love him for his body and his mind. Dr. T.
Waiting for that one to get old.
Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody.
The Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 in District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Thank you once again to those unions for jumping on board with us. And of course, today's show is brought to you by our friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor.
I'm back at your house. By midnight, you know I got home. No, I know once you get the highway.